On today's Hot Zone, we're going to talk to some missionaries who live at the very end of the road in Panama, and they're seeing things that have great import for the immigration debate here in the United States.
This is the Hot Zone. Engaging with the news in a whole new way, international war correspondent Chuck Holton brings insight into areas of crisis and lets you help those affected.
Hey folks, Chuck Holton here. I'm on vacation now. I am in my farm in West Virginia, and see how beautiful this is? I mean, how can I continue to do this podcast for this month while I'm here in West Virginia? Well, I'm going to keep doing it because I love it. It's so much fun, and I've got so much good content already in the can from my various trips around over the last couple of weeks. So we're going to keep on shooting the podcast, and I just want to let you know what I'm giving up here while I'm working and slaving away for you. So the least you could do is go online to wherever you're listening to this podcast and like it and share it with your friends. Try to get the word out because we got to get more viewers. There's lots of great things going on here. We're doing a lot of good for a lot of people, and I'm going to show you some more of that later on this week. So please like and share the podcast. Leave a review on iTunes or Facebook or wherever you watch it, and I really appreciate you doing that. Also, go to opslens.com. You can view the podcast there, and you're definitely going to want to do that. If you're listening to it in your car, that's great, but it's much better if you can watch it because I'm putting some incredible video together for you. So today we're going to go and we're going to talk to a missionary who lives at the very end of the road in Panama. That's in Yaviza, the furthest point south you can drive. We did a podcast last week from there, but this is a full uncut interview. It's actually kind of a sneak peek because this guy's interview is going to be on CBN later on this week. So check it out. All right. So tell me about the ministry that you have here and how you guys got here and what you do.
Okay. Welcome to Yaviza, Darien. My name is Alan Foster, and I live here with my family, my wife Colleen and 2 kids. And we work with the Imbaran and Wonan peoples. The invitation from them here was to serve their communities with water, mercy ministries. And our invitation to serve here from the local church of Imbaran and Wonan is to come alongside them to go into communities with mercy ministries, provide clean water, sanitation, help with agriculture, and through that take the gospel and share it with them. Yeah.
Okay, and so what are you finding as far as the current situation with the migrants and all that?
Starting about 4 years ago, there was a massive influx of migrants that began from all over the world, which was a real big surprise given how remote we are. And it has increased over the years. And this past year, the pressure of the migrants on the villages where we've worked. So there's one village of Canaan where we installed a water system. There was about 400 people at the time. And sometimes they'll have an additional 1,500 people there with maybe 100 coming in and 100 being shipped out, coordinated by the local military police. And the pressure on the community from fecal contamination in the bush all around to the consumption of water where there was enough before. Now the water might last for a couple of hours in the day. People are now taking the community's crops and different things. There's not order and regulation in how the migrants are moving through, and it's become a real strain on the community. Nonetheless, the church is responding, trying to share the love of Christ where they can. It can be difficult because the majority don't speak Spanish, hence the problems with them not understanding the community's expectations around respecting their crops, respecting their river, respecting their women and children. And so the church is still, they're housing them for free in their homes. They've bandaged their wounds. These people, when they've come out of the Darien Gap, which is a notorious space to cross in any condition, they come out, sometimes with infections, with their feet swollen. Many have died. There's clothed skeletons along the trail that even the local police, military are not willing to go in and deal with because of the dangers from guerrilla and paramilitary factions. And so most of them have already been robbed and have come through tremendous physical hardship, and they're very compromised emotionally when they arrive to the community. So even though it's tragic, seeing the condition that they arrive in and understanding where they've come from, hearing their stories, the strife in their home villages, the tales of people being burned in their homes, in Cameroon, for instance, that we heard recently. The space that they're in, to be able to hear the good news and the villagers responding to that need and being willing to open up their homes to them is just an incredible testimony for Christ.
When these people come out of there, some of the people in the village are, like, it's changing their indigenous culture. It's causing a change in their indigenous culture. It's changed. They're going from a primarily agrarian kind of subsistence farming kind of thing to almost like migrant tourism now. How is it changing their culture? Are they losing their ancient way, the thing that makes them what they are?
Yeah, they were certainly shifting prior to the influx of migrants. They were shifting from a hunter-gatherer society to an agrarian society, much like what we see with the tribes of Israel in the Old Testament. And sometimes we've even referred to this as the Wild Wild East, because there's so many parallels between Eastern Panama and the stories we read about from hundreds of years ago in the Western United States. Yeah. But this is an overnight shift, and it's a massive shift. If you can imagine, you live in a group of 400 people and your population quadruples with a group of people that you don't understand, you can't speak to. If they've been robbed and they're hungry coming into your village, and the local government is not able logistically to provide enough support to deal with what's happening. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not in their shoes. We're in a supporting role with them, and even going in there and hearing them, because they're very passive and loving people. Mm-hmm. But they're sharing now openly with us, because the trust that we have with them, that it's getting almost to a breaking point. It's very difficult for them to respond now that they've begun to lose their food and their crops because of the lack of coordination and the lack of help, the lack of support, and the remoteness of the location, which is increasing now. The first rains of the year just set in the last couple of days, and so there'll no longer be car access. It'll only be dugout canoe access, which triples, quadruples the cost, the time, and
difficulty.
Yeah, the difficulty. Mm-hmm. We're talking about people groups that have lived very much hand to mouth for generations now. They just came onto the economic scene about 3 generations ago. Are working with a cash economy, and so, but they're poor people. They're impoverished people, financially speaking, by our North American standards. However, I would say they're very rich spiritually and emotionally, especially the believers. Emotionally, the non-believers, and spiritually, the believers there. And their willingness to respond to the crisis. So their economy has shifted. Yes, they were subsistence farmers before, and so now there is a need there from the locals to receive transport out to the highway now. There's a need from the locals, for instance, for housing. So they do charge them something. Would they be able to do it all for free otherwise and attend to their farms? I don't think so. So I think they're meeting a very real need, and I think they're responding as anybody would given the circumstances.
Right. What's your biggest challenge in dealing with these different cultures, whether they're the indigenous cultures or the Panamanian culture, that as you've lived here and you've had to learn, what's been your biggest challenge?
I'd say our biggest challenge and also opportunity is that there's no methodology, there's no rule book, there's often not even a right or wrong answer in what's the best way. And so for us to be able to recommit and tune our spirits into the Holy Spirit every single day and ask Him, Lord, how do we do this particular thing? How do we do that particular thing? And just pray that He'll guide us each and every day, because it's easy to do too much or to do too little, and to do less than what God's Spirit would have us do whenever He's working perfectly through us.
What led you to come to Yaviza?
To Yaviza?
Your family?
Yeah, I was down here working before as a Peace Corps volunteer, committed to Jesus, but that was the route that He led me into, mm-hmm. And I was not married then. Later, my wife and I, having been married, we were later on. My wife and I, having gotten married, we were leaning towards going into a restricted area where you couldn't go in as formal missionaries, let's say. And so we were actually preparing to join Peace Corps again and go into Jordan and started studying Arabic and all this other thing. And I got a call asking us to pray about returning to Panama. And we realized that going off to Jordan would be an amazing experience, but that God had actually prepared us to come back here and serve these people through our previous experience with them.
Oh, good. Tell me about the rigors and the dangers of the trek that these people are making. We talked yesterday about there are areas where, I mean, you know, so just some of the dangers and that sort of thing, but then we also talked about there are areas over there on the Colombian side where you said it's illegal to preach the gospel or something. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so the people that we work with here, the Choco, often referred to as the Choco Indians. Although for them that's a derogatory term, but it means that they came from the Choco region of Colombia. So here they're the Embaran Wonan. But what happened with persecution that happened back in the 50s and 60s, many started migrating over. So the villages here were mostly founded in the 70s, some in the 80s. And the goal, the vision, the calling of the church here is actually to equip ourselves here in a place where we have freedom to worship, freedom to teach, freedom to get to know Jesus better without just overt significant persecution, to return back to the Choco region. And so teams have already been sent over. This is a very new thing, to go into areas, into villages where it has been publicly forbidden to preach the gospel, publicly forbidden to gather publicly in groups of 2 or more. And so they're doing house church teaching right now and praying into the timing for the next step, which is to mobilize more teams into that region and create a stronger witness and stronger presence of the church.
Mm-hmm. It's very dangerous crossing the Darien. Tell me about some of the dangers those people see in there.
The migrants coming across?
Anybody that's walking around in there.
Yeah, so the dangers in the Darien Gap, you have just the obvious physical dangers, whether it's a snake or a jaguar, or mosquito-borne illnesses, infections. These are the things that happen regularly coming through there. Drug traffickers, paramilitary groups, just plain criminals. Yeah, well, basically what's happened now, that since the peace deal was declared in October and FARC disbanded, they had most of the power control. And it seems like a lot of the political groups that controlled the area, they gradually, if you notice, like the number of kidnappings and things seemed to decline as the drug trade went up. So they shifted from political organization to just drug smugglers, right? That's what it seems like. But as FARC disbanded, it created a power vacuum. And so all these other smaller groups, little guerrilla groups or gangs have come up to fill that vacuum. And it creates less, it's destabilized the power structures even more. Rather than creating more peace, it's created more strife.
Does that mean that there are risks and dangers for you even living here in Yaviza? Or, I mean, you know, with the drug traffickers and that sort of thing? Or you just stay out of their way, they stay out of your way?
Hopefully that's the case. On the trail that we're standing on right now, about less than 100 yards down this way, I was with one of our local brothers that lives on the camp here. He's actually a refugee from Colombia, and I had the privilege the other night of staying up and listening to his life story of the 15-minute escape. There was a hit list, and he and part of his family were on it, and they walked over from Colombia. That's been about 9 years ago now. Here with him and his father-in-law, his wife, his little baby girls, who were 3 and 5 at the time. And he took me down this trail and said, yeah, this used to be a drug trafficking route right here. They pulled up the boats right here and then walked over the mountain right here. And I thought he was talking about a long time ago. And he's like, yeah, that's in 2014. and we live right here, so it's a little closer to home. But it's as long as you're not participating in illicit activities, and because it is, everybody out here, it operates like family. People know each other's business and what's going on. And the community here surrounds one and protects one. And we feel very blessed to be in this community.
How big is Yaviza?
Yaviza now is about between 4,000 and 5,000 people, I think.
Oh, it's almost the size of LA. That's wow. I didn't realize it was that big. I think the first time I came here, it had to be just like 500 people. I mean, it wasn't very big at all. But it's grown a lot.
What's really odd, and I don't understand why, if you look at the Wikipedia logs, it claims that Yaviza used to have 8,000 or 9,000 people back a decade ago.
Maybe.
I don't know why that is, or if they expanded the area that they're counting.
Wow. So what are your biggest needs? How can people how can people find your ministry? How can they help your ministry? And what are your biggest needs right now?
Yeah, because of the context we're in, we actually took down our blog and website, so we just do all our correspondence through email. So if you want to post my email address, people are free to email me personally, and we can put you on our mailing list. I said there's no methodology, so when people ask how do we do things or what kind of wells do we do or water systems, I usually tell them that our way is reactionary. We strive very hard to keep the village involved at all levels, committed with their labor, committed with their resources. We've had them sell avocados to buy water pumps. We've had them, sell plantains or tubers, many different things and so community input is a high value for us. But still, there comes a time when it's appropriate for us, those of us that have been more blessed financially, to partner. And so we also try to discern when are those appropriate moments and invite people into that. And then we'll post specific needs as those needs arise, whether it's to buy some extra tubes or to finance a workshop or those things that we see as key investments in the church and in the community to be able to help them move towards sustainable development. Ultimately, the church, we want the church to be self-supporting so that it's not just North Americans sending out missionaries, but the local indigenous church also sending their own missionaries, because they can go to Colombia and communicate in ways that I will never understand or be able to.
Mm-hmm. And so what is it you need as far as the water supply we were talking about up there?
Oh, specifically in Canaan, we were hoping to upgrade the system. It was just running on solar panels until currently.
Well, I hope you liked that as much as I did, and I hope you'll be back again tomorrow, because I've got some more good stuff for you coming up, so don't miss it. I'm Chuck Holton. Thanks for watching.
The Hot Zone is produced by Amy Holton and Livefire Media. Copyright 2019.